Hello and welcome to episode 14 of GCSE Revision from me, Ben, at AQA Sociology. Today, what we're going to be doing is having a look at the views of Max Weber on stratification. So if you haven't already, please go back and have a watch of the previous videos that I've done on the stratification topic already. So I've done one on like an intro to stratification, and I've also done another episode just recently on the functionalist versus the Marxist view of stratification. So go back and check those out if you haven't already, episodes 12 and 13. But today, as I say, we're going to have a look at Max Weber. It's Weber, not Weber or Weber. It's Max Weber. He's German, and he has got a very particular view on how society is stratified, how it's split up. So what we're going to go through today is we're going to have a look at an overview of Weber and stratification. We'll have a look at three key concepts that Weber uses, which is power, control, and authority. It gets a little bit confusing because then Weber's also got three types of authority that he discusses as well, which you're going to need to know about. So we'll go through those. We'll go and have a run through of some sort of 10 key terms from this video. So if you've seen the previous videos, you'll know that that's the thing I'm doing at the moment. I'm just running through sort of 10 key terms or words that I've used in this video to check you understand them. And then we're going to finish off with a couple of short exam questions on Weber and power and those kind of things. So without further ado, let's get cracking into the main bit of this video. So Weber's views on stratification. Right, so really, when I'm going to go through this video, it is very much worth you having a look back at the previous videos. That's episode 13 on the functionalist versus Marxist view of stratification, because they're both theories, obviously. Weber is also coming at this issue of stratification from a theoretical angle, but instead of being a functionalist or a Marxist or a feminist, he is a symbolic interactionist. So Weber is somebody who studies the meanings that people give to various things. That's what a symbolic interactionist is. Sometimes you might just hear them referred to as interactionist. It's effectively the same thing. So Weber's very much interested in meaning, and he's interested in the meaning in how people are seen in society. So he looks at the way that people get their position in the social strata, the social system of stratification, so those different layers in that hierarchy, according to how they are seen by others in society. It's all about your identity. So what does your identity actually mean for you and for others looking at you as to how you're seen was where you lie in that position in the social strata. So Weber is sort of, in a way, influenced by Marx, because Marx obviously looks at the way that society is stratified according to your social class. Are you in the bourgeoisie at the top, or are you in the proletariat at the bottom? Weber takes it a step further, and he looks at not only class, but he also looks at status and what he calls power or party. And altogether, these three things sort of are called what Weber describes as our socio-economic status. So his kind of big idea about where we are in our stratification system is due to our socioeconomic status, which is made up of three things that are key to our identity. So it's our class, our status, and our power. Now let's go through these three things individually just to check what they mean. So basically, if you think along the same sort of, excuse me, think along the same sort of lines as Marxism for this, but know that Weber goes a fair bit further, and Weber is not a Marxist either. So what we mean by class is effectively where you're at in society, what your occupation is, how much money that occupation brings into you. But that's sort of the same thing that what Marx says. Either you're in the bourgeoisie and you own the means of production, or you're in the proletariat and you don't own the means of production. You have to sell your labor. Weber goes further in that he says that your class is down to not only your job, so your occupation and how much money you get paid for that, but also what he calls your market position. Now, your market position is basically your earnings potential. So, for instance, we're thinking here of somebody perhaps who starts off in their career, perhaps someone who's starting off in a career in law or medicine or something like that, who perhaps at the start of their career isn't going to be earning a huge amount of money, but they have got potential to earn a very big amount of money. As we looked at in the previous video, it takes an awful long time to train to be a doctor or a lawyer. So those people get high rewards at the end of having gone through that training and end of being qualified and fully developed as a doctor or lawyer. So your market position, according to Weber, is really important, because it's not just about how much you earn at the moment, it's what's your potential to earn in the future. And that's the key thing that comes down to sort of identifying somebody's class and ultimately their position in the social strata. So for the first thing, Weber sees as where you are at in the strata, in the system of stratification, is your class, which is based on your occupation and your market position. But there's also your status as well. So your status is different to your class. It's not necessarily what you do for a job and how much money you've got and like your earnings potential. It's about how important your job, or ultimately you, is seen as being in society. Now, in our society today, there are certain jobs that are seen as having higher status than others. So, for instance, you might look at, say, a teacher has got a relatively high status, but a cleaner doesn't necessarily. But those jobs that have high status don't always come with the same levels of rewards or pay that we might expect to see for jobs that are ultimately very important in society. So for Weber, it's not just about your class, the job that you have, it's also about how your job is seen. And it's not always that your job that you have, if it's a high status job, won't necessarily be high paid work. So we can think about this the other way around as well. So one of my very good friends is an electrician. Now, traditionally, electricians aren't seen as being a particularly high status job. Of course, they're important, but in his job, if you take him as an electrician and me as a teacher, arguably I've got more high status than he has in my job, but he earns way more money than I do. So it's not just about your class, it's also about your status as well, according to Weber. And the final thing is probably the trickiest thing to get your head around, but it's not that difficult, hopefully, if I explain it well, is what Weber calls power, or he sometimes refers to as party. Now, power is basically the ability to get things done and influence things. And power doesn't always come through the occupation or your job or the level of status you have in society. Sometimes power can actually be obtained and got by doing things outside of your job. So the example that Weber gives is you might be a member of a political party, and that's where the word party comes from when he talks about power. So you might have quite a lot of power, but not in your job, not in the way that you're fundamentally seen in society, but through your other roles that you might have. So the examples I often give are obviously being a member of a political party. You may well have the ability to become an MP. It could also be being a member of a school governor or a trustee of an organization as well. So some other kind of responsibility in society where you've got trust and therefore you have power over something. And as Weber talks about, it's often about being members of political parties. So three things there for Weber that basically ultimately equal your socioeconomic status. They're all to do with your identity. It's class, that's your job and your market position. Your status, that's how you're seen by society and how important your job is seen as being. And then your power or party that you may well have from roles outside of your job. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to have a little sip of coffee from my delightful All Sociology mug. As I say, you can get hold of one of these on eBay. If you just type in All Sociology, all one word, you'll find me. There's a bunch on there at the moment if you want to pick one of those up and be as cool as me. Yeah. Right. So we've gone through the ultimate like overview of Max Weber and what he says about stratification. But now what we're going to do is have a comparison of Weber to Marx, because there is some similarities. Obviously, both of them speak about class, but there is also the added extras from Weber's, particularly of status and power or party as well. So if we take a look at the classic Marxist way of viewing social stratification, you've got the bourgeoisie at the top, they have all the power, and the proletariat at the bottom, they don't. The way that Weber differs is that he adds in the aspect of status and power or party to this notion of class that Marx bases his system on. So Marx's system is purely based on class. It's where are you? What job have you got? Are you rich? Do you own something? If you do, you're in the bourgeoisie. If you don't, you're in the proletariat. But Weber adds in the mix of things like status and power. So we've got three things to consider with Weber when we're considering what someone's socioeconomic status is and where they sit in that social hierarchy. Now, when we think about Marx, it's quite easy to sort of say, well, you know, if you own something, you're at the top. If you don't, you're at the bottom. It's more complicated with Weber because you have to consider these three different things. So I'm just going to take you through three examples, very stereotypical examples of people and how they might be seen by society based on their socioeconomic status, so class status and power. So we'll start off with, in the pink there, we've got a cleaner. Cleaners don't earn an awful lot of money. Their job isn't particularly well paid, so they're haven't got an awful deal of class, according to Weber. Their status, they don't have a huge deal, seen as a great deal of importance. Well, they're blimmin' important cleaners, because if we didn't have them, the world would be a right old mess, but they're not seen as being particularly important. So their status is quite low as well. And there's not an awful lot of power, because this person doesn't have any extra roles or any extra kind of responsibilities outside of being a cleaner. So that's like kind of how we might see a cleaner's socioeconomic status according to Weber. Let's have a look at someone different. So now we're going to have a look at a nurse. Now we can see here that a nurse has got a higher market position than a cleaner, so they've got a higher ceiling of earnings, so their class is higher than that of a cleaner. Their status, they're also seen arguably as more important than cleaners in society, because they hold a really important job. So we've got a greater deal of status there for someone who's a nurse, but the power basically stays pretty much the same. They've not got a huge, much more power than someone who is a cleaner. For instance, if I just flip back between a cleaner there and our nurse there, it's about the same, because they're not a member of any political party. They've not actually got another role of responsibility outside their job. But if we now have a look at someone who might be, say, for instance, a lawyer and a school governor, you can see this person, because their job and their market position is high, so high salaries, high potential for salaries, their class is going to be nice and high. Their status, they're seen as important in society by the rest of society. And the power, the reason they've got a high level of power here is really because they're a school governor as well. So they've got that extra role in addition to being a lawyer, which gives them an extra level of power where they could influence things. For instance, getting the head teacher sacked of the school that they're a governor of. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a visual representation. Just go back through those again. So cleaner, very small in terms of those three aspects. A nurse has perhaps got a bit more status and class than a cleaner. But then if we look at a lawyer who's also got that role as a school governor, they really have got like kind of, you know, all three of those things nice and sewn up. So that's sort of a comparison of the Marxist versus the Weberian ways of looking at socioeconomic status and ultimately your position in the social strata. Now, three really key concepts that we need to sort of narrow in on when we talk about Weber: power, social control, and authority. And these are kind of things that Weber talks quite a lot about, but also you're just going to need to know as part of this stratification and differentiation course at GCSE Sociology. So let's just run through what these things are. I know I've kind of covered power already, but power is basically the influence, the ability to influence things and to get things done. There's two types of power. We've got firstly informal power. Informal power is often like just unwritten rules that people use, and often informal powers like used by kind of informal agents of social control, your families, schools. And what they will try and do is to get you to do what they want you to do, whether it's to tidy your room or to do your homework. They will use power to very informally encourage you to do things. So, you know, please go and pick up your school bag from the stairs, otherwise you're not getting a dessert tonight. Those kind of things. It's not really massively sort of formally done, and it's not super official. Formal power is a lot more official. So formal power tends to be kind of based on written rules and laws, and often is used when informal sources of power fail. Often we think of this type of formal power as being power by force. So, you know, if you don't pick your school bag up from the bottom of the stairs and take it up to your room, and you decide that you don't want to do that because you don't care about what dessert you get for dinner or after dinner, what formal power might be is someone literally dragging you to get your bag up from the bottom of the stairs and take it up to your room. So it's a different type of way in which power can be exercised. Now, power often always comes with kind of sanctions. So sanctions are either a system of rewards or punishments. We think of sanctions in terms of both formal sanctions, so like official sanctions, whether that's being arrested by the police or put into prison, those kind of things, or informal sanctions. So your teacher glaring at you when you're talking in class, or your parents giving a curfew to you saying you're not allowed out past 9 o'clock or something. But also positive and negative sanctions as well. So positive sanctions are basically rewards, so rewards for good behavior or good work. Negative sanctions obviously punishments as well, so they can be administered by both informal power and formal power as well. Right, social control. You probably know this fairly well. If you don't, you can go back and have a look at I think my first video that I did on key terms. It kind of goes through things like social control, formal and informal. I'll run through it really quickly with you. There are different. Social control is making sure that we keep control and order in society. There's a bunch of different groups that do that. We call them agents of social control. So you've got groups like the police, the courts, the prison system. But then on the other hand, you've also got things like your families, your friends and peers, the education system, the media, religion, so on and so forth. So we've got between those, we've got what we call formal agents of social control. If you are a formal agent of social control, like the police, the courts, the prison system, it is your job to make sure that society is controlled. So a police officer's job is to arrest criminals, for instance, to make sure that things run as they should do. And they tend to use those formal sanctions. So sanctions that have got a bit of seriousness to it, often that might be backed up by a law or something written down. Then you've got your informal agents like your family, your peers, the education system, and they tend to use what we call informal sanctions. So these are less serious sanctions. Again, things like being grounded, having a break time detention, something like that from school. The one I always use when I talk about your peers using informal sanctions would be like, say you've done something wrong, you might be kicked out of a WhatsApp group, you might be ignored on social media or something like that. Okay, so just little ways that people can control your behavior, both formally and informally. And then authority, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Weber's view of authority specifically in a minute. Authority is very similar to power, but it's about having the power to make decisions or to give orders and to get things done based on that. So you're the one in charge, basically. That's what authority means. So when we talk about authority, we often look at the ways that different groups in society have different levels of authority or power or control based on where they are in, where their position is in that social strata. So again, thinking about stratification, how society layered, how do we see people in different ways, and how do we treat people differentially? So that's your stratification part, where are they? And your differentiation part is how those different groups are treated. So hold on to this idea of authority, about having the power to give orders or make decisions, because we're going to have a bit of a look at Weber's view on authority particularly now. And Weber identifies three different forms of authority. I'm just going to have a sip of this because I think every time I've said I'm going to have a drink, I've just rattled on. That's me. Right. Okay, there he is. Maxi W. He's got these three ideas on how people get authority in society. And they're actually quite straightforward, although some of the words he uses to describe them can be a little bit tricky. So let's just go through these three forms of Weber's authority. The first one he talks about is traditional authority. This is where people get their authority based on long-established traditions, their birthright, or ultimately any kind of ascribed status that they might be born into. So a classic example of somebody with traditional authority would be the current king, King Charles III, or anyone in the royal family. How does the king become the king? They're born into the royal family and they become next in line to the throne. They don't actually have to do anything to get that authority. They're literally there through this tradition and through birthright, through ascribed status. Okay, so traditional authority, nice and easy, hopefully to understand. The next type of authority is what Weber refers to as charismatic authority. Now, charisma is having the ability to get people to want to listen to you and to want to follow you. So this is where people get authority basically through their personalities and the ideas they have and how they conduct themselves. So people want to follow and listen to the ideas of charismatic individuals, people who've got this charisma, they've got something to say, people want to hear what these people have got to say. So classic examples of people who have gained authority, their ability to make orders and influence decisions through charisma would be someone like Gandhi, or very easy one would be Martin Luther King. So helping to gain civil rights in America during the 1950s and 1960s. Why did he have the authority to do that? Because he was someone that people wanted to listen to. He had a way with words. He was clever. He just basically got people to follow him because of who he was and his personality. So we've got traditional authority, you're born into it. Charismatic authority is based on basically your personality. The final type sounds really complicated, but it honestly isn't. It's called rational legal authority, right? Now, rational legal authority basically means that you get authority having kind of gone through a system and been chosen as the best person to give authority for that particular role. So the classic example I would give here is somebody who gets a job based on the merits of their CV and their experience. So how do you get to be, my example there is Gareth Southgate, the England manager. How did Gareth Southgate become the England manager? Because he's gone through the system, he's gone through the whole kind of process of what he needs to do to be a manager. He's been a manager of other football clubs, he's gone through his coaching licenses and all those kind of things. He obviously interviewed well, he had a good CV. The reason he is chosen to be the England football manager for the men's team is because he was the best person for the job based on his skills and experience. So there we go. 3 different types of authority according to Weber: traditional, birthright; charismatic, your personality; rational, legal, you've gone through the process, you're the best person for the job or to give that authority. There we go. Right. So we are quite close to the end. This is going to probably be one of my quickest videos. I might even be able to get this one done in half an hour if I'm lucky. Yeah, we'll see. 10 key terms from this video. So I'm just going to run through 10 things that I've kind of covered off in this video already with you. So these will all be things that I've spent a bit of time speaking about already. I'm just going to cover them off to make sure you know them, because sociology is very much like just learning a language. If you can use the right terms and the right words in the right places, you'll get good marks for the work that you do. So identity, what is identity? Identity is the way that you are seen, or the way that you see yourself in society. How are you viewed by other people? That can come down to lots of different things, whether it's the social group you belong to, how you're represented, how you put yourself out there. It can also be to do with your status, your class, and any kind of levels of power or authority you have in society. Right, class. So class, according to Weber at least, is based on your occupation, so the job that you do, and your market position. What is your earnings potential? And class is one of the 3 things that makes up Weber's 3 parts of his socio-economic status. I mentioned just there, your class is fundamentally kind of defined not by how much you earn at the moment, but by your market position. What is your potential for earnings in the future? Your status is the second thing that Weber mentions as part of socioeconomic status. Status is just how you're seen in society. What's your kind of position that you have? How important are you, or how important is your job seen in society? And the third aspect of socioeconomic status for Weber is the power that you have, or the party that you belong to. So power and party very much refers to the ability you have to influence things, but possibly outside of your job. So belonging, for instance, to a political party, a trade union, being a trustee of an organization, or being a school governor would be really good examples of having power or party outside of your main job. Social control is the way that we control society, and we make sure that we keep order in society to prevent chaos. So anyone who goes against the norms and values will often be subject to some kind of form of social control, whether that's formal or informal. Authority is about having the power to influence things and get things done. So you are the person in charge. According to Weber, there are 3 types of authority that people get. The first is traditional authority, which is authority you get through ascribed status or being born into a position, for instance, the King of England. The second type of authority Weber talks about is charismatic authority. This is where you get authority based on your personality and having people want to follow you and listen to you. For example, Martin Luther King. And the final type of authority would be rational legal authority, which is where you get given a position of authority based on you being decided as the best person for that position. For example, being based on your experience or your CV, like, for instance, Gareth Southgate being the England men's football manager. So there we are, 10 key terms that I've gone through in this video. Hopefully they've kind of like solidified in your mind a little bit now. If not, just drop me a comment in the comments under this video if you want me to go through anything. I'm fairly good at getting back to people, so do just let me know if there's anything you want me to go over again. Okay, so we're going to do a quick word on the exams before we finish. And as I've mentioned to you before, what do you need to know, or what you need to know for this is that stratification differentiation is a big topic on exam paper 2. By the way, this is something specifically for Eduqas GCSE students. If you take a different exam board like AQA or something else, worth listening to this, but don't hold me to this because your exam will be different. But if you do Eduqas or WJC, listen up, because I'm going to tell you how to answer some questions. So Strat Diff, very big topic in paper 2. Paper 2's 100 marks is made up of 7 sections. The stratification and differentiation topics make up sections 3, 4, and 5. Now, those 3 sections on their own are worth 49 out of your 100 marks on this paper. So it's basically half of the paper will be made up on stratification and differentiation. Now, in this section, you'll be answering questions that are 2 marks, 4 marks, or 9-mark questions. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of some of those smaller ones here. So an example of a 2-mark question would be describe what is meant by power. And an example of a 4-mark question would be describe 2 types of authority identified by Max Weber. So what I would suggest you do now is pause this video, have a think about how you could answer those 2 questions. The first one, the 2-mark question, needs to be like a sentence, a long sentence or a couple of short sentences, like 2 lines. That's what we're looking for. The second one down, we're looking for basically a double 2-marker. So you've got to sort of give 2 types of Weber's authority. And again, I would do each one in a couple of lines or a couple of sentences. So you're looking at about 3, 4 sentences, or 3, 4 lines, that kind of thing for this question. So have a think about how you might answer that. And I will, in a very brief moment, flip the slide over and go over how I would answer those 2 questions. And I'm going to cover this first one. There's a couple of ways you can do this. This is the beautiful thing about sociology, that there is no necessarily one way to answer a question. So if the question was describe what is meant by power, one way of answering that, you can see from here, I've just written 2 short sentences. Power means having the ability to influence things or get things done. That gets me 1 mark. I then need to develop that answer to give a little bit further. So I've then written power can be used informally or formally, depending on the situation. You know, that's all you kind of need to do to get 2 marks there. Another way you can answer that is like this. So power is the ability of a person or group to get what they want and influence decisions. That gets me 1 mark. I'm now going to develop it and get a 2nd mark. Weber said having power increases a person's position in society. So all I've done there is given 2 sentences for each of those answers. So you wouldn't have to give both of these, it's one or the other, or indeed something else, but a sentence that tells you what power is. So that's the first sentence in both of those examples. And then just the development of the answer, which is my 2nd sentence in both of those examples there. When it comes to your 2 types of authority identified by Weber, what the exam board are looking for here is for you to mention either traditional, charismatic, or rational legal authority. So let's have a look and see what I've gone for here. So one type is traditional authority. I'll get a mark for just mentioning traditional authority. I then need to get the 2nd mark by explaining it. So where a person's right to rule is based on traditional customs, such as King Charles and the royal family. That's my 2nd mark there. A 3rd mark comes when I mention rational legal authority, where a person gets authority from being chosen from a system or process, e.g. the Prime Minister is chosen by being elected as head of the party, then voted in following election. Okay, so I've given the 1st mark, excuse me, for when I mention rational legal authority, and the 2nd mark just comes from the example and the explanation of that. 4 marks for that one and 2 marks for the top one. Hopefully, that gives you a bit of an idea as to how to answer those questions. So we're just going to recap what we've done today before I sign off. So we've gone through today Weber's views on stratification. I gave you an overview to Max Weber, and I looked at really how he sees, your position in the social strata, particularly in comparison to the Marxist view. We looked at 3 kind of key terms associated with Weber, which is power, control, and authority. And we looked at the ways that power, status, and class makes up someone's socioeconomic status. We considered Weber's 3 types of authority, looking at traditional, charismatic, and rational legal authority. And then I ran through 10 key terms with you, focusing on things like identity, class, status, market position, power and party, social control. What else did I do? Authority, traditional, rational, legal, and charismatic. So they're the 10 key terms I went through with you before finishing off with a 2-mark and a 4-mark exam question. So that's it. That's me. I'm back. Here we go. So all there is to say now is thank you very much. If you've made it this far to the end of the video, well done. I hope it's been helpful for you. If it has, you can always just do me a favor, just repay me, very, very small way. Just drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, or even better, go and tell one of your friends who also does sociology that you found this video useful. Send them a link or something like that. It really, really helps me if you can just spread the word a little bit. So yeah, if you can do that, that would be awesome. Other things to say before I sign off, I've got another video coming up very shortly. What am I going to do next time? I'm going to be focusing on social class as a way of differentiating people and groups in society. So have a look out for that one. If you haven't already, go back and check out my previous videos on an introduction to stratification, and then also the Marxist versus the functionalist view on strat. And finally, if you are feeling super generous, you can go and buy me a pint or a cup of coffee. If you met me in the street, or if you met me in real life and you thought, that guy's helped me out, he's, helped me out with some video content and help me understand sociology more. If I met him in real life, I would buy him a coffee. You can do so. All you've got to do is go over to patreon.com/allsociology. And you can pledge to donate like £3 or something like that. You don't have to stick it as well. So if you don't want to like do it for more than 1 month, just cancel it. That's absolutely fine. I don't care. I will take any free coffees that are sent my way, and they will be massively appreciated. So I'm going to sign off now. Stop babbling. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you next time. See you later. Bye.